Welcome, esteemed viewers. We journey back in time to unveil the hidden secrets of the legendary samurai. We picture these brave warriors as noble heroes, living by Bushido, facing their end with grace and loyalty. But what if this perfect image is a crafted lie? The true history of Japan is actually far darker. For centuries, these men were ruthless mercenaries. They betrayed masters for gold and decimated innocent peasants. How did these ruthless fighters become noble gentlemen? Let us expose the greatest illusion of the samurai. Modern cinema paints the samurai as flawless icons of pure honor, untouched by the greed of ordinary men. We imagine them walking gracefully through cherry blossom gardens, wearing pristine silk garments in absolute peace. Their minds are supposedly forged in the quiet discipline of Zen Buddhism and the delicate ancient art of tea. In popular tales, they are the ultimate guardians of justice, wielding sharp blades only to protect the weak. The core of this myth is Bushido, the famous way of the warrior, demanding absolute loyalty to their lord. Under this sacred code, a samurai must value his reputation and honor far above his own mortal life. If they face defeat or disgrace, they do not beg for mercy. They proudly choose the sacred act of Seppuku. Ending their earthly journey with a short blade, they reclaim their lost honor in a final act of extreme bravery. This vision shows warriors writing beautiful poetry before marching bravely into their final grand battles. We see them meditating in silent temples, seeking spiritual enlightenment far from the mortal world's chaos. Books and movies tell us that a true samurai would rather starve to death than commit a single dishonorable act. They are depicted as loyal servants, standing like iron shields before their masters against impossible odds. The gleaming katana is described not just as a weapon, but as the pure, uncorrupted soul of the warrior himself. These tales captivated the world, turning the Japanese swordsman into a universal symbol of integrity. Generations have grown up admiring their unwavering discipline and their absolute rejection of earthly wealth. Even today, martial arts schools teach these ancient moral values, keeping the beautiful legend alive and thriving. But legends are often just shadows, projected onto the walls of history by those who wish to hide the truth. To find the real samurai, we must leave the peaceful tea rooms and step onto the brutal battlefields of the past. We journey back to the Sengoku period, a dark age of endless civil war and extreme violence. If you were handed absolute power in a lawless world, would you remain a saint or become a ruthless tyrant? In the 15th century, Japan was torn apart by greedy warlords fighting for supreme control of the land. In this brutal world, the idealized Bushido code simply did not exist. Survival was the only rule. Records from the Sengoku era reveal samurai were actually ruthless, highly paid mercenaries. They did not fight for poetic honor or moral justice. They fought for land, wealth, and their enemies' complete defeat. The pristine silk kimonos fade away, replaced by heavy, battle-scarred armor soaked in mud and tragic ruin. Instead of meditating in temples, these warriors spent their lives marching through burning villages and fallen ruins. The idea of absolute loyalty is perhaps the greatest lie of all. Treachery was a common strategy. Many historical texts document the practice of gekokujo, where ambitious vassals vanquished their own lords. A samurai would quickly switch sides in a massive battle if the opposing army offered a better reward. Betrayal brought no shame. The only shame in the brutal Sengoku period was losing your life and territory. When battles ended, the cruelty of these warriors did not stop. It was fiercely redirected at the common people. The lower classes, especially poor farmers and peasants, lived in absolute terror of the men who carried two swords. Samurai held a dark rite known as Kiri-sute gomen, the absolute power of life and sudden death. This law allowed a warrior to instantly punish any commoner who showed even the slightest hint of disrespect. A farmer failing to bow low enough, or just bumping into a samurai, would be struck down upon the very spot. Some brutal swordsmen even used innocent travelers to test the sharpness of a newly forged blade at lonely crossroads. These dark acts were rarely punished by the authorities, as the ruling class protected their own violent enforcers. The gleaming katana was no symbol of purity. It was an instrument of sheer terror and daily oppression. Villages were heavily taxed, and peasants lacking enough rice were brutally punished or sold directly into slavery. Modern scholars confirm that for hundreds of years, the samurai acted as a wealthy, heavily armed mafia network. They controlled the trade routes, extorted local merchants, and violently crushed any desperate peasant rebellions. The noble heroes seen in movies were, in reality, the very monsters that ordinary people prayed to escape. War was their profitable business, and chaos was the brutal ladder they climbed to achieve total political dominance. A dramatic shift occurred early in the 17th century. The endless, tragic civil wars finally ended. The Tokugawa Shogunate united the land, plunging Japan into a strict, controlled era of peace. The battle-hardened mercenaries soon found themselves in a quiet society that no longer needed their violent skills. With no wars to fight or foes to crush, the samurai faced a massive and humiliating existential crisis. As decades of peace rolled by, the once terrifying warriors grew soft, trading their battle armor for comfortable silk. They transitioned from deadly battlefield commanders into a privileged class of lazy, idle government bureaucrats. The shogunate faced a great problem: how to control a massive population of bored, heavily armed aristocrats. If these arrogant men were left without a clear purpose, their natural instinct for violence might spark a new rebellion. The government needed a strong tool to brainwash the samurai, turning wild wolves into obedient, loyal guard dogs. This urgent political need birthed the philosophical lie that the modern world now blindly worships as absolute truth. The famous book Hagakure, the ultimate guide to Bushido, was not penned during the age of great warriors. It was actually compiled in the 18th century, long after the legendary samurai had vanished. The author, Yamamoto Tsunetomo, was a peaceful bureaucrat who never saw actual combat. He wrote from deep nostalgia, inventing a romanticized past to criticize the soft, lazy men of his own era. The shogunate soon weaponized these philosophical writings to establish strict control over their useless soldiers. Bushido was fiercely promoted, demanding absolute obedience to the government above all personal desires. The code taught that dying for one's master was the highest glory, effectively neutralizing any threat of armed treason. To justify their elite status and wealth while doing no real work, the samurai rebranded themselves as moral guides. They claimed their superior virtue and discipline made them the natural, rightful rulers of the lower social classes. Rituals like the tea ceremony and calligraphy were used to distract from their lack of true military purpose. The katana, once a practical tool of war, was quickly elevated into a sacred, almost magical piece of jewelry. Bureaucrats paraded through the streets with expensive swords they barely knew how to use in actual life-or-death combat. Beneath the facade of poetry and Zen meditation, they remained a deeply oppressive and arrogant ruling class. While samurai wrote gentle verses of falling cherry blossoms, the peasants continued to starve under crushing taxes. The beautiful illusion of Bushido masked the harsh reality of a rigid, brutal, dictatorial society. They built a massive wall of strict laws and moral codes to ensure no other class could ever challenge their supreme power. The state forbade commoners from owning weapons, ensuring the samurai maintained absolute physical dominance. By the late Edo period, the warrior class became a huge financial burden on the rapidly modernizing nation. Their stipends consumed huge amounts of national wealth, while they contributed nothing to economic progress. The once feared mercenaries devolved into arrogant clerks, fiercely clinging to an outdated mythology. They lived in a sad delusion, worshipping an idealized version of ancient ancestors that never truly existed. The historical lie of the noble samurai successfully trapped both the oppressed peasants and the proud warriors themselves. As the modern era arrived, the mighty shogunate began to crumble under heavy foreign pressure. In the 19th century, foreign ships forced the isolated country to open its borders to the world. The arrival of modern technology exposed the extreme weakness of the outdated samurai ruling class. Armed with swords and ancient pride, they could not defend Japan against powerful, industrial, modern cannons. The deeply angry peasants, oppressed by the strict system, saw a perfect chance to overthrow their cruel masters. This chaos sparked the Meiji Restoration, a revolution that destroyed the old feudal system forever. The new government officially abolished the samurai, stripping away their special ancient privileges. They were forbidden from carrying swords in public, losing the ultimate symbol of their high status. To survive the changing world, many proud warriors were forced to take up humiliating manual labor. Desperate lords sold off their ancient armor and priceless blades just to buy food for their starving families. The terrifying men who once ruled with power were now ordinary citizens, abandoned by history. Stubborn traditionalists rejected this modern reality, sparking a final, tragic rebellion. The Satsuma War was not noble. It was a desperate fight to maintain their oppressive elite power. These elite swordsmen charged into battle, truly believing their samurai spirit would protect them all. They were easily crushed by a new national army made entirely of ordinary lower-class farmers. The legendary sword, forged over many months, was instantly shattered by cheap bullets fired by commoners. As the smoke cleared on the final battlefield, the physical existence of the samurai was erased. But the new government realized the powerful myth of Bushido was far too valuable to simply discard. They recycled the romantic warrior code to build a fierce and intensely loyal modern military force. The strict devotion once given to a warlord was cleverly redirected toward the divine emperor. Millions of soldiers were brainwashed to believe they were the spiritual heirs of the ancient warriors. This manufactured propaganda fueled extreme nationalism and dark atrocities during the World War. The kamikaze pilots crashing into ships were following a dark, twisted version of ancient Seppuku. The illusion of honor was used by politicians to send millions of men to their devastating deaths. Tell me, if you were a mighty Japanese lord, would you surrender your ancient sword to a peasant with a modern rifle? Today, pop culture continues to happily consume the highly sanitized and marketable samurai myth. We buy games and movies to escape into a fantasy of perfect morals and cool, stylized violence. Continually honoring this fake past is a dangerous insult to the millions who suffered under their strict rule. We must carefully separate the ancient art of swordsmanship from the brutal, oppressive men who wielded the sharp blades. The true samurai was a flawed human, trapped in an endless cycle of violence and deep paranoia. He was a predator in chaos and an arrogant parasite when peace finally settled across the land. The shining armor displayed in museums is empty, holding nothing but the ghosts of a violent era. These silent, ancient artifacts do not show perfection. They are remnants of a strict and truly ruthless dictatorship. History demands we look into the dark, acknowledging the deep pain built into the ancient foundations. The tale of the noble warrior is a comforting story, designed to hide the silent cries of the innocent. When we strip away the cherry blossoms and the poetry, we are left with the cold steel of reality. The samurai did not willingly fade into the past. They violently fought progress until the very end. Their defeat was necessary for society to grow, freeing the common people from centuries of dark fear. As the heavy mists of time roll over the battlefields, the true faces of these complex men are finally clear. They were neither perfect saints nor mindless demons, but practical survivors in a very unforgiving world. Their legacy teaches us to question the beautiful myths handed down by those who hold supreme power. When history presents a flawless hero, we must always search for the victims hidden in the shadows. The samurai legend is propaganda, a brilliant illusion painted over a dark canvas of profound pain. By fully understanding their true nature, we can finally break free from the spell of a dangerous romance. We can honor the real truth of human history, instead of blindly worshipping a highly crafted lie. The warrior walking into the sunset is a beautiful image, but it is not the historical reality. Let all the ancient myths finally fade away, and allow the brutal truth of the past to simply stand on its own. In the end, were the samurai truly noble warriors? Or just brutal oppressors shaped by a strict system? Does their dark reality destroy their legendary legacy? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you truly enjoyed this truth, please like, share, and subscribe. Join us for more deep dives into the secrets of the past.